Hey, this is Parsifal. I also go by Will, and I'm here with a little preamble before I start the video. This is basically editing a Will, and I am making a bit of an introduction to this. This video is about my OC Dativo. He is a very personal OC to me, and I end up talking a lot about mental states and mental health related stuff. Um, like depression and anxiety related stuff, and if that's not your jam, I would highly recommend muting or going to a different video, because I'm not gonna say it gets really heavy, but it definitely gets maybe a little bit uncomfortable for me, but and I don't know if it's gonna be uncomfortable for you, but I know it could hit hard for some people. uh but this is a video I'm making for myself as a birthday gift to myself. So I don't really want to edit it or do another take on it, just because it's important to me and I want to be nice to myself on my birthday. I hope you guys enjoy this video regardless. But again, if you guys are super sensitive to mental health talk or like personal struggles with mental health and validation, I would mute this video or put something else on. But yeah, hope you guys enjoy. See you around. Hey guys, it's Parsifal. I also go by Will, and I am back with another character babble. As usual, if you'd rather just watch a speed paint and put on your own music, feel free to do so. You can just mute me and do whatever you like for background sound. Otherwise, hi, I'm going to be talking about my OC Dativo today, and um, you can see here in this footage that I am struggling to figure out what pose I'm going to put him in, and I actually end up changing some of the line art in the final image of this piece because I screwed up the line art during the actual process. But yeah, I don't really know how I want to approach this one. Not because Dativo is an undeveloped character. He is quite the opposite, in my opinion. He is a significantly developed character for me, but that's sort of why I don't know where to start with this one, because he is such a significantly personal character to me, and it's just somewhat difficult to articulate what I want in the way I want to. Um, but I'm going to give it a shot because um, I want to sometimes be able to talk about some of my characters, even the ones who, like Tivo, are kind of huge trash fires. That's how I'm going to start with that. Dativo is a huge trash fire. He he is an OC that I've had since around 2012, and I say around 2012 because I don't know exactly when I got him. Um, but he was originally created as an NPC for an original character tournament by my friend Jazzy, Jazzafraz on Twitter and Jazzrhythm on DeviantArt. And I sort of super hyper focused on him, and I loved the concept, and I did a lot of headcanoning and stuff with him and his character because he was an NPC that was part of what we did with him. He didn't really have a character of his own. He was just sort of there to facilitate story writing, and I continued that even past the competition, even past the group, and just sort of kept writing concepts with him to the point where my friend Jazzy eventually went, "Hey, I'm not going to be using him for anything after this. Do you want him?" And I said yes, because I really liked his dynamic that I'd written with my characters, and I had other things that I thought I could do with him. And originally, he was just a really, really, like, terrible person. He was originally a Hunger Games fan character where he was the first president of Panem, and he was this bloodthirsty, egotistical dude who just liked to see people suffer. He wasn't very developed or nuanced or anything like that. Um, he was about as nuanced as any sort of like complex NPC for a comic character tournament would be for that sort of purpose. You don't give a character like that too much backstory. You let other people work within that framework. So he didn't have a lot. I worked a lot with the idea of him and stuff like that. So I did take him and I started developing him more. And so I just, over the years, he got a family. I made him a brother and a sister, and he has a mom and a dad now, and eventually he ended up with kids. And I used him so much and I developed him so much that he became one of my favorite characters to work with. And eventually, he was supposed to be this just unrepentant, really crappy person who, like, hurt a lot of people, and he did not deserve any sort of, like, happiness in life because of everything that he did to others. He was terrible, and this was even before I made the Kane family Faye, so he was just a terrible human being, not even just a terrible inhuman being like he eventually became with the rest of the family. Uh, and he was supposed to be the sort of antagonist that does not deserve a redemption arc, does not get a redemption arc, and you cannot relate to him. And that was in contrast to some of the other Kane family members who you could relate to, you were supposed to relate to, and it made you feel uncomfortable because you were relating to them, because they were more human or more understandable than Dativo was. Dativo was just supposed to be just this absolute trash magnet. Terrible, horrible. Always wore suits, always looked like a slime bag. But obviously, as you can see from the art that I'm doing, he's not in a suit anymore. And he is smiling, which is a thing that he didn't really used to do when I originally had him. I mean, he would smirk and be arrogant and stuff like that, and he kind of still has that here, but this is as close to a genuine smile as I think he's going to get. He is genuinely happy in this picture, and not because of other people suffering, which is, I think, the most important part of that. Because over time, as I worked with Dativo and the rest of the Kanes, I was working through health stuff myself, and I don't want to get too much into it, but the Kanes themselves sort of became a bit of a projection of myself onto them, or bits of myself, so I could sort of start to process things and process concepts that were really difficult to deal with. And originally Dativo was the, you don't deserve anything because you were a crappy person, and this is what you deserve. You deserve to be alone and unhappy and miserable because of everything you did. But as I analyzed his family and his dynamic with the rest of his family, he slowly started standing out as the reason he was the way he was because he hated himself, because he couldn't really reach the standards that he set for himself to be as good as his brother, which were standards put on him by favoritism caused by his mother, the fact that his father was a little bit absent and had obviously favorite children, and Dativo was sort of the last child in the family and sort of forgotten, and he didn't get any validation or attention, really. But that's not an excuse for what he did. And so I was still at the point of, well, he's still like an asshole and he does not deserve a happy ending. And even if he goes through this arc where he tries to be a better person, people don't owe him their forgiveness. He doesn't get that. He doesn't deserve that. And he still doesn't. And it was interesting to work things out, because slowly, as I worked through him over the months, the years, it turned into, well, yeah, he doesn't deserve it, but maybe I should give him one anyway. Not because he deserves it, but because part of me wanted to overcome that, because the the big thing that I struggled with for a time was I felt like, to a certain extent, there was things that I didn't deserve because of this or that, or something was my fault, and therefore, like, mental illness stuff that just was really crappy. And eventually, I was kind of tired of dunking on my own OC. I'd been working with him for what, like 8 years, 9 years at this point. Well, 6 years, because it was a couple years ago. And so I wanted to give him friends that he still didn't deserve, but he, sometimes people go through arcs whether or not they deserve it or not. Sometimes they find friends. Sometimes they find people who care about them, and it's not about whether someone deserves it or not, but it's about whether they can be a good person with support. And so through several groups that I used him in, he slowly gained friends, and some of my friends made characters who put up with him, is how I would describe it, because I don't really think that anyone can actually really be friends with Dativo as he was written at the time, but they kind of put up with him. And eventually Dativo as a character sort of developed into a character who learned that he should ask for help if those things happen, and he learned how to self regulate, and it didn't excuse any of the terrible things he did before, but if a lot of what he was set up because he didn't have attention or validation, I wanted to work with a story that ended up somewhere along the lines of, yeah, he doesn't deserve it, but it's not about whether someone deserves something. If something is given, they have the opportunity to change. And if they do have the opportunity to change and the ability to and the help to do so, it's better if they do, not just for other people, but also for themselves. So this picture of Dativo that I'm drawing here is really a picture of Dativo as he currently is, sort of working through trying to be a better person for himself. Uh, Partially for redemption, because it is technically a redemption arc, but he's not going to get anyone's forgiveness for what he did, because he doesn't deserve that forgiveness. He deserves to try and be a better person for his own merit and the merit of being a better person in the future. And it's really hard to articulate, just because it's tied up with a bunch of mental illness stuff that I don't really want to put a label on with Dativo, because he is not human in the stories that I write with him now. He is Fae, and therefore I don't want to like imply anything about inhumanity and specific mental illnesses. So it's just sort of a wibbly wobbly ball of like allegorical, metaphorical, whatever mental struggles. Um, but yeah, it's it's a story that's really important to me because it's helped me work through my own insecurities and mental illness struggles. And sometimes you just want to take your personal characters and put them in a story that is, to a certain extent, heartwarming and validating, so that you yourself know that it doesn't matter how bad you get, you are still worth validation. It doesn't matter how much you hate yourself or what mistakes you've made as a person, that because you as a human being still deserve to, be cared about. And that was a thing that I struggled with a lot. I it like just because I make a mistake doesn't mean that I am unworthy of attention or success or anything like that. And no one else can say that I'm not, and I can't I don't want to let them say that I'm not. And obviously I can't speak for like the complexity of like, well, so and so did this and they murdered someone. Does that mean they're still worth validation? Like, that's not what this is about. And I know that that's a complex situation that, isn't really discussed. But I only have like 20 minutes for this video, and a lot of it is me babbling about my own OCs, and this is, incredibly weird and wonky in the first place. So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the mental voice that Dativo represents, of just hating yourself because you look at everything that you've done in your past, because your mental illness brain just amplifies all of it, and shitty situations that you had no control over because it was just something that you were born into, and it really, really sucks, but that's not anyone's fault. And like, that's not, most importantly, that's not your fault, and you don't have to spend your time hating yourself because you don't succeed at arbitrary standards that you set for yourself or other people set for you. And it's all this and all that and stuff like that. But you know what? This is just a video that I'm making because I really want to love myself again, and I want to love my OCs again, and Dativo is so important to me because part of his story is learning to, even if he can't love himself his own way, loving himself through letting others love him. And I feel like that's really important for me and how my mental state has developed over the last decade. And I don't know whether this is going to resonate with anyone else. I don't know whether it's meaningful to anyone else, but it's meaningful to me, and that's important. And I also want to make sure that I make stuff for me too sometimes. And yeah, this was a big old long rambly video about one of my most personal OCs, and I kind of a little bit spilled my heart out here. So like, I'm sorry if this was just a long and really crappy video where I'm just talking and saying a lot, but I wanted to make it because it's a video for myself, and maybe I can put it here to help other people in the future, even if that person is just a future me. But yeah, thank you guys for sitting through this if you managed to make it this far in the video. I'm not going to do an outro this time, but I hope you guys enjoyed listening to me ramble about this, and I hope you guys have a really nice day. See you.